In 1967, a psychologist named Martin Seligman conducted a laboratory experiment that would accidentally unlock the darkest riddle of the human psyche. He placed a dog inside a shuttle box, a cage divided into two compartments separated by a low barrier. A shock was delivered to one side. Naturally, any normal animal would simply hop over the small barrier to safety, but the dogs Seligman used weren't normal. Before this, they had been tied down and given shocks with absolutely no way to escape. And now, with the barrier lowered and the cage door wide open, something terrifying happened. As the floor electrified, the dogs didn't jump. They didn't even try. They simply lay down on the wire floor, closed their eyes, and whimpered. They had learned that their actions meant nothing. They had internalized a dark conclusion. Submission is the only rational response to a world you cannot control. Psychologists call this learned helplessness. Now look at your own life. Look at your career. Look at that silent, suffocating anxiety that hits you on a Sunday evening. You look at the headlines about generative AI taking over your industry. You see the mass layoffs creeping closer to your age bracket. You watch 20-somethings on TikTok building automated empires while you've spent the last 5 years formatting the exact same PowerPoint decks, writing the same corporate briefs, or tweaking the same design templates. And instead of fighting back, instead of learning the deep skills required to survive this epical shift, what do? You buy another $200 online course that you will never finish. You scroll through LinkedIn with a bitter, cynical smile. And eventually, you whisper to yourself the most comforting lie ever invented. I'm just not built for this new era. I've reached my limit. I'm just not that type of person. You call it quiet quitting. You call it apostle of work-life balance. You call it a 35-year-old career ceiling. But let's strip away the corporate euphemisms. You are that dog in Seligman's cage. You haven't run out of potential. You have just spent a decade highly disciplined, deeply focused, and meticulously practicing how to become completely ordinary. Today, we are going to dismantle the psychological scam your brain has pulled on you. And we're going to look at the cold industrial science of how human exceptionalism is actually manufactured. For the past 2 decades, popular culture has been intoxicated by a single, beautifully simple formula, the 10,000-hour rule. Malcolm Gladwell sold millions of books, telling us that if you just feed the engine of time with 10,000 hours of raw labor, the machine will automatically spit out a master. It is a gorgeous, romantic lie. It turns success into a transaction of martyrdom. Give up your youth, punch the time card, and greatness is guaranteed. But the original scientific research behind expertise states the exact opposite. Pure, unreflective repetition does not create masters. It creates automated relics. Let's look at a modern reality. Take Julian, a 36-year-old senior product manager in Seattle. For 8 years, he survived the brutal corporate culture of a FAANG tech giant. He put in his 10,000 hours. He was excellent at his job. He could write a product requirement document in his sleep. He could navigate cross-departmental politics with absolute mastery. Then, the tech winter arrived. He was laid off. Armed with a generous severance package, Julian decided to become a digital nomad, offering freelance consulting on global platforms. He thought he was an expert, but when he faced the raw market, where clients didn't care about corporate acronyms and instead demanded He independently built an entire AI-driven workflow from scratch. Julian froze. He didn't just fail, he paralyzed. Why? Because Julian didn't have 8 years of evolving expertise. He had 1 year of basic competence, repeated 8 times. This is what behavioral science calls the automaticity plateau. When you first learn a skill, whether it's driving a car, coding, or managing a team, you are highly focused. You make mistakes, you correct them, and your brain consumes massive amounts of energy. But eventually, you reach an acceptable level of performance. You can do the job without thinking. The moment a skill becomes effortless, the moment you can run it on autopilot, is the exact moment your cognitive growth grinds to a halt. Your brain, in its evolutionary desire to save energy, coats those specific neural pathways in a protective sheath called myelin, turning them into highly efficient, low-energy superhighways. Once a skill is automated, it doesn't just stay the same. Without deliberate friction, it slowly, politely decays. Julian wasn't growing for 8 years. He was sinking deeper into a comfortable cognitive rut. If your daily work feels smooth, if your routine feels pleasant and familiar, you aren't mastering your career anymore. You are merely practicing your own obsolescence. Whenever we witness elite human performance, our immediate cultural reflex is to sanctify it. We call it genius. We call it an innate gift. We tell stories of a young Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart possessing the miraculous gift of perfect absolute pitch, reproducing complex concertos on the piano at 5 years old. We look at sports icons like Ray Allen, the legendary NBA three-point shooter, and assume his hands were uniquely engineered by God to never shake under pressure. We love these stories. We consume them like mythology. But why? Why are we so desperate to believe in the supernatural nature of talent? Because believing that greatness is genetic is the most comfortable psychological coping mechanism you have. Think about it. If Mozart was born a divine musical alien, and if Ray Allen possesses a biological blueprint for accuracy, then your mediocrity is completely justified. If success is determined at conception, you are entirely off the hook. You can sit on your couch, open a bag of chips, watch the elite run the world, and say, "Well, I'm just not that type of person. I don't have the genes." The myth of talent is nothing more than an emotional shield to protect your fragile ego from the terrifying scale of your own untapped agency. Let's look at the cold, unvarnished history. When cognitive scientists actually investigated the Mozart myth, the magic dissolved. Mozart wasn't born with absolute pitch. He was raised by an intensely obsessive music educator father who subjected him to an unprecedented, highly structured, immersive training regime from the time he could crawl. Years later, a Japanese psychologist named Ayako Sakakibara took a group of ordinary, unselected children and put them through a specific, rigorous training program designed to teach them absolute pitch. The result? Every single child in the study developed perfect absolute pitch. A trait once thought to be a 1 in a million genetic miracle was revealed to be nothing more than a predictable byproduct of early deliberate training. And what about Ray Allen? When a TV commentator once praised him as a natural-born shooter, Allen didn't smile. He grew angry. He said, "Don't underestimate the work I put in every single day. I didn't jump shot well in high school. I built this." Every masterpiece you see in the world is the result of an industrial, boring, and highly systematic factory of effort that the public relations of success refuses to show you. They sell you the magic because reality doesn't sell tickets. But when you buy the magic, you buy your own prison. If talent is a myth, then what is the actual structural difference between the person who collapses into a 35-year-old midlife crisis and the person who seamlessly reinvents themselves to dominate every new era? The difference isn't raw intellectual horsepower. It's not working memory capacity. It is an internal infrastructure called mental representations. Think of your mind like a computer. Most people navigate their careers by processing information through their short-term memory, which is small, slow, and easily overwhelmed by chaos. High achievers, however, have spent years installing an internal SSD. They have compressed years of experience into sophisticated, highly organized networks of patterns, rules, and archetypes stored in their long-term memory. Let's look at Mark, a 34-year-old independent illustrator living in Brooklyn. For a decade, Mark excelled at a specific aesthetic: translucent watercolors and metallic line art. He was a master of his craft. Then, generative AI exploded. Within months, clients started using algorithms that could mimic Mark's entire aesthetic portfolio in 5 seconds. Mark fell into a deep, existential despair. He looked at the software and thought, "I can't compete with this. My mind can't process information at this speed." He felt his brain had reached its structural limit. But here is the cognitive error. Mark believed his value was in his hands, in the mechanics of his watercolor technique. He didn't realize that his true asset was the massive network of mental representations he had built about composition, emotional resonance, and visual storytelling. To unlock that internal SSD, however, you have to be willing to destroy your current comfort zone. This is the core law of purposeful practice. It must be deliberately, systematically uncomfortable. If you are reading a book, taking a course, or practicing a skill, and it feels smooth, fun, and easy, you are not growing. You are just burning time in a low-level dopamine loop. Real cognitive rewiring requires cognitive friction. It requires you to operate right on the razor's edge of your current capability, where you are constantly making mistakes, constantly feeling slightly incompetent, and constantly forcing your brain to synthesize new structural patterns. The pain you feel when trying to learn a complex new domain after 30 is not the sound of your brain failing. It is the sound of your old automated myelin pathways being forcibly rewritten. Most people run away from that friction because they mistake discomfort for a lack of talent. High performers run toward it because they know friction is the only currency that buys expertise. We live in an era of hyper-isolated, atomized self-improvement. We are told that the path to evolution is solitary. We isolate ourselves in our rooms, put on noise-canceling headphones, and buy endless subscriptions to digital academies, trying to download competence into our isolated minds. This is the ultimate consumer trap of modern education. We confuse the consumption of information with the acquisition of capability. Consider Sarah, a 38-year-old middle manager at a global consultancy firm in London. Trapped between high-stress executive targets and an unmotivated team, she feels completely stuck. To solve her crisis, Sarah spends thousands of pounds on executive coaching videos and leadership certificates online. She watches them late at night, feeling a profound sense of temporary progress. Yet, when she steps into the boardroom the next morning, Nothing changes. She still defaults to the same defensive management styles she's used for a decade. Why? Because Sarah is practicing in an echo chamber. She has no mirror. She has no immediate, brutal, and uncompromised feedback loops. Practicing a complex human skill in isolation is like trying to learn how to swim by reading an essay in a desert. It feels safe because there is no one there to tell you how bad you actually are. You get to protect your ego, look at your progress bar hit 100%, and remain utterly useless in the real world. True expertise is a contact sport. It does not live in databases or pre-recorded tutorials. It lives deep within what social scientists call a community of practice. Look at the history of how the most complex domains of human wisdom were transmitted through the ancient, hyper-effective system of apprenticeship. You didn't study leadership or art from a distance. You entered the physical or digital ecosystem of masters. You allowed your work to be stripped down, criticized, and rebuilt in real time by an environment that refused to validate your illusions. If your self-improvement journey doesn't include a mechanism that regularly bruises your ego and forces you to confront your blind spots, you are not evolving. You are just paying for intellectual entertainment to numb the pain of your stagnation. Stop collecting data points. Get into an arena with people who make you nervous. Jean-Paul Sartre, the existential philosopher, famously penned the phrase, "Existence precedes essence." He meant that you are not born with a fixed nature. You are not an item manufactured in a factory with a permanent label that says product manager, illustrator, or not built for math. You exist first, and every single day, through the specific, deliberate choices you make, you design your essence. The 35-year-old crisis is not a biological reality. Your brain has not closed its doors to the future. The feeling of helplessness that paralyzes you is nothing more than an evolutionary trick, a conspiracy between a lazy brain trying to save energy and a terrified ego trying to avoid the raw discomfort of being a beginner again. When you choose to stay in a routine that no longer challenges you, you are not maintaining stability. You are actively, with immense discipline, reinforcing your own limitations. You are choosing to let the automated pathways of your past dictate the architecture of your future. There is no predetermined genetic limit waiting to crush you. There is no age where the concrete of your mind permanently dries. Your potential is not an inheritance waiting to be found in a hidden corner of your soul. It is a monument that must be built, piece by piece, through the voluntary embrace of mental friction. So close the 50 open browser tabs of empty promises. Step away from the comfortable plateaus of your daily routine. Stop waiting for inspiration to save you, and stop apologizing for your age. Your mind is still under construction. It is time to stop practicing how to be ordinary